Gay adoption is being normalized. Commercial surrogacy is now a billion-dollar industry. Children are being handed over to men with no mothers, no roots, and no say. This is how a civilization gets dismantled, one policy at a time. And Matt Walsh just put the collapse into words they can't unhear.
Okay, so I'm not on X all that much, but I do read you. And sometimes I read your tweets and I'm like, Matt Walsh, ladies and gentlemen, spinning people up. Here's one. We've been saying for many years that gay adoption and surrogacy should be illegal. Now everyone else seems to be catching on. We've been saying for many years that gay adoption's an abomination. I've never heard anybody say that.
Wow, we're just diving right in.
We're diving right in.
Gay adoption is an abomination. Yeah, well, I think there I was referring to social conservatives, because social conservatives still somehow get a bad rap. So, so-called social conservatives, even among other conservatives and other people on the right, it seems to me. But so when I say we, I mean like so-called social conservatives.
I've never heard them say that. I've never heard anybody. I think I agree with it, what you said, but I don't think I've ever heard a single person say that. Everyone seems to be afraid to say that.
Yeah, most people are. That's why I think, but so-called social conservatism is that's why it's not popular even on the right.
Can I ask you is there anything more hated on the right than social conservatism?
I don't think so.
So you could say, like, I think we should drop an atomic bomb on a bunch of people and just like kill them all and their kids, and people are like, well, that's a really good idea. But if you're like, actually, we should like save some kids, then they hate you. What is that?
Yeah. Or we should look at the way that human society was structured for thousands of years, and we should probably consider that they were right about a lot of that stuff. Maybe not everything.
Right.
Maybe not everything, but there are just certain basic civilizational truths that we have moved away from in recent decades. But I don't think there was any good reason to move away from them. And so if human beings did something a certain way for literally millennia in every civilization that we know of, it's probably right. I mean, there's probably a lot to be said for it. Again, not in every case, but in most cases. So
it's worth pondering anyway. It tells you something if every civilization, none of which that we know of had contact with each other, came to the same conclusions.
Exactly. So it's something like the gay adoption. That, and this isn't the only argument against it, but I think it is a worthwhile argument that there's never been a society anywhere on earth, anywhere period, where they have had two men in a romantic relationship starting a family. That's never existed. It's always been a man and a woman start a family, or in certain ancient civilizations and even some primitive ones today, you might have a man and several women. You might have polygamy.
Mm-hmm. That's a pretty common feature, I would say.
Certainly common, but you never had. And why do you have polygamy? I don't support polygamy, but there was a logic to it, especially in ancient times.
Yes,
you got to create people. And the whole point is to create. The whole point of the family is to make children and care for them. And a family that's headed up by two gay men that's why it's an abomination. It's just
it never happened before, and now it's happening, and that's why we call it progress, right? This is progress. It's something that was never been done.
Yeah,
and
it's progress in the way it's progress in the way that cancer progresses. So when I hear about progressivism, I think of progressivism. It is progress.
So we're at stage 4 gay right now, would you say?
Oh yeah, full on stage 4. Yeah. Terminal. It's a terminal case. Yeah.
So yeah, I just figure why not just jump right into it. So but so I think you make an obvious and very fair and smart point. We should pay attention to the way things have always been done, because maybe we can learn something. It's like discarding it all French Revolution style doesn't end well. I totally agree. But what's the more affirmative, detailed case against it? These kids don't have homes, and here are two loving parents to watch over the child. Why is that bad?
Yeah, well, I think that there are a couple of things. First of all, it's interesting to note that when this conversation about gay parenthood first started really in earnest, like 10 years ago, most of the conversation was focused on adoption and
Right.
gay men want to adopt. But now what's happened is there's been a shift. And now you've got a lot of these gay couples that are turning to surrogacy.
Mhm.
So they're renting wombs, they're renting they're purchasing the body parts of women and renting them, using them like an Airbnb rental.
Wait, I thought we got rid of slavery.
Yeah, I would have thought, but
Okay.
this is exactly, this is in a very literal sense, the objectification of a human being, treating them like an object, using them as an object. So it's just interesting. There was a study done recently, a survey a couple of years ago, actually, that found that it was like 60+% of gay couples, when they think about parenting, they would prefer surrogacy. So it's this sleight of hand trick you see on the left a lot, where they want to bring about some social change and they present an argument for it. But then once they get what they want, they abandon that. And then you figure out what they actually wanted. So it's kind of like adoption has given way to surrogacy. And then the whole argument, which I never bought, which is that we're rescuing kids who are in these terrible situations in foster care, that's out the window, because these are not kids that you're rescuing. You're creating them. Rather than rescuing a kid from an unfortunate situation, you're creating them to be in an unfortunate situation from birth, which is a different thing. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that even if we're talking,
But would you concede that one upside to a collapsing post-industrial economy is there are a ton of poor people who are willing to have babies for profit?
I don't know that I would call that an upside. That's it.
Just like, this is so like,
Yeah, that's
people don't take 3 steps back. Like, if this were happening and if Dickens were writing about this in the
Yeah.
1850s, you'd be like, wow, London's a very screwed up place.
Yeah.
Where we're taking advantage of the poor. Like, that's the step beyond prostitution.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is treating someone, as you said correctly, as an object.
But there's also the fundamental point, whether it's surrogacy or adoption. The fundamental point is, what does the child have a right to? We keep hearing about,
Right.
we hear about this right to parenthood. I mean, you have gay couples now that are demanding insurance cover fertility treatments, as if the reason why 2 men can't make a baby is because of fertility problems. No, it's because of the laws of nature. And that is cloaked under this. It's sort of under this umbrella of, well, I have a right to parenthood. No, you don't have a right to. What does that mean? No one has a right to be a parent. It's great to be a parent if you can, but you're not born with this like entitlement. You're entitled to a child. What the hell does that mean? Rather than talking about the right of the parent, let's talk about the right of the child. And this applies to so many other. This applies to abortion. This applies to a lot of topics. What does the child have a right to? And I would say a child has a right to a mother and a father. A child has a right to the basic fundamental setup that billions of kids throughout history have had, which is a mother and a father. Now, if through the course of events, through no one's fault, that is taken away from a child. I mean, you can have a parent that dies, you end up with a single parent. You can have a divorce, which I think is terrible. But it's not supposed to work that way. So if you have a child in foster care, you're looking for a mother and a father. And to just say, okay, well, we'll give this child to 2 dads, you're basically giving up on that child. You're saying, well, yeah, we couldn't find the right setup for you, so instead you're getting this. And I just reject that. I reject that totally. And I also think, frankly, that, a lot of people won't like this, but
I think we've passed the point where
yeah, right. No one likes anything that we're saying.
Right.
A child being in foster care is far from an ideal scenario. It's very, very sad.
They told you this was progress, but what you're watching is the industrialization of human life. A market where children are manufactured, women are rented, and families are erased by design. This isn't compassion. It's the state deciding who gets to be a parent, what a child is worth, and which values are allowed to survive. Gay surrogacy isn't a loophole. It's a blueprint. And every time they force you to celebrate it, they're tightening the leash. Stage 4 isn't a joke. It's the final stage before obedience becomes irreversible.